The trade deadline is right around the corner. Maybe as you're listening to this, the deadline has passed. Probably not. But should the Bengals make a move? Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow, along with your host, James Rapien, coming to you every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team. And we appreciate all the everydayers out there, all of the first listeners who make us their first listen in the morning. Today's episode of Locked On Bengals brought to you by FanDuel, who can make every moment more. Right now, new customers are going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins at FanDuel.com/locked on. And James, I know your answer to this question. I'm gonna loft you the softest of softballs right now. Just gonna put it on the tee. And if you don't hit it over the wall, I'll be very disappointed in you. Should the Cincinnati Bengals make a trade deadline move?
And Griffey just hit it way, way, way over the wall. At least 5-year-old me would envision himself being Ken Griffey Jr. in his backyard. Of course, hell yes, they should make a move before Tuesday at 4 p.m., Jake. They should derail Halloween plans for Bengals writers everywhere and make me and you and everybody else react to the move that they made, where they land a piece that fills one of the glaring holes on their roster. They showed on Sunday that they're one of the most talented teams in the league. And there's obvious holes, despite them being one of the most talented teams in the league. And I think it's pretty rinse repeat as far as those holes. We've discussed them a lot. But the one major one that I think is on everybody's mind right now is tight end, because they overcame the tight end issue on Sunday, and really not much production out of the tight end room in general throughout the first 7 weeks of the year, or 7 games of the year. But Irv Smith Jr.'s fumble, like, now it's not just not getting production, it's negative. And it really let the 49ers back into the game. Now the Bengals were able to answer and respond and still win the game, but you need to find something, because they aren't getting Hayden Hurst level production or CJ Uzama level production. And it isn't just Irv Smith Jr., by the way. I think Drew Sample's a quality blocker and is going to be on this roster for the foreseeable future. But that man couldn't catch a pass in the flat. Like, you have to catch that. And by the way, I like these guys. I like Irv. I talk to him regularly. I like Drew. Talk to him regularly. If you're the Bengals, have 9 draft picks in 2024. You're going to get 2 compensatory selections. That's the projection. The projections are almost always right. I think it's going to happen. Giving up a pick to get a tight end makes a ton of sense. The other 2 holes are obviously running back, defensive tackle, a 3-tech pass rusher type. Any of the 3, address them if you can. And a lot of people say it's a Mike Brown issue. Duke Tobin calls a lot of the shots here. And I'm not pointing the finger at Duke and being mean here, but I just know he values draft picks. And at the same time, this roster is so dang good, they should really try to do everything they can to make a move and get this roster in a better spot. It's in a good spot. Make it even better before the deadline on Tuesday.
Currently, they are projected to get a 5th rounder for Von Bell, a 7th rounder for Samaje Perine. The one thing I will add to this, because a lot of people have talked about Samaje Perine, a lot of people have talked about Hayden Hurst. I'm going to need to double check on this, but one reason the Bengals might not trade for either of those guys, outside of some other obvious reasons you might have discussed, is if they return to the Bengals, that will not be a compensatory free agent lost in the formula anymore. So that would have a double effect. So they would have to trade a pick to get those guys. And then they would lose a comp pick for that guy. And then it's kind of a double whammy. But that aside, there are plenty of directions the Bengals could go that don't involve a guy like Hayden Hurst or Samaje Perine, or maybe some people want Von Bell back, even though I don't know anybody is talking about that. But there's plenty of other targets out there that don't necessarily make a lot of money, that are in contract years, that couldn't cost, that late day 3 pick. Will the Bengals make a move? I remain highly skeptical. And I would say
Yeah.
that's still unlikely. I'll be surprised if we're recording at 3:00 tomorrow because the Bengals made a move. Would I welcome
Yeah.
it? Yeah, I mean, you look around the NFL, and I think Joe Goodberry has made this point a few times. The teams that are getting to that Super Bowl, that are winning the Super Bowl, are teams that have made trades in
Yep.
season. And that trend is
Including,
increasing the last 4 years.
and that's why I leave the window cracked, the door cracked for this possibility to happen. And I know there's going to be a lot of comments saying, "What, you don't know the Bengals?" Blah, blah. First off, get out of here. Yeah, I do, and so does Jake. We talk about him every single day and write about it. Yeah, we do. Of course, we know that it's unlikely, but the Bengals have done a lot of unlikely things in recent years. And 10 years ago, I was saying how, and a lot of people were, it's not just me, how they need to be more active in free agency. And that's where Super Bowl contenders are made. As much as it is drafting and everything else and elite quarterback play, you have to be aggressive in free agency. The Bengals have gotten it right there. And so hopefully they're at least kicking the tires. And I'll say this right now. I don't want Hayden Hurst back. I will rip them if they trade for Hayden Hurst because it's a bad contract. And it's like a $10 million cap hit next year. And that just does not make any sense. There are other options.
Cutting him. It'd be another 1-year deal for him.
And then you pay cap wise to do that. Like, it's just brutal. I would hate it. And instead you could land a Hunter Henry, a Mike Gesicki. You could go after AJ Dillon from, imagine trading for a Dillon, by the way, at the deadline. AJ Dillon from the Packers, Antonio Gibson from the Commanders. Like, there are guys on 1-year deals that aren't Samaje Perine or Hayden Hurst that make sense, or in the final year of their contract, just to be clear, one or the other. And so there are options. Danico Autry is probably the best player out of all of them. If you could somehow get him from Tennessee to bolster the interior of that defensive front, like, give me 2 of those 5 guys, and this roster is awesome.
Yeah.
But that's unrealistic to ask for 2. Just get 1. Get Mike Gesicki. Get Joe Burrow another weapon. Joe just showed how great he is on Sunday. Why would you not say, you know what? Hey, Bill Belichick, we've traded before. Here's our 6th round pick. Give us Mike Gesicki, who signed a 1-year prove-it deal and clearly isn't producing for you because your offense stinks and you're the worst team in the AFC.
Yeah, I'd say 7th. But either way, you're talking about a late round pick, I think, for Gesicki. But like,
look at you.
Yeah, I got a wheel and deal here. But the other thing is, like, it doesn't even have to be those guys. Because we haven't talked about, like, Jonathan Bullard, I think, is the name that I have mentioned, interior defensive lineman from playing in Minnesota right now. If they really wanted to shoot for the stars, it'd be Jonathan Allen. But there's like a 0% chance of that happening. But I would love it more than most things if they did. But Danico Autry for sure, Tyler Tart on the same team. Even Andrew Billings in Chicago, old friend, has been playing pretty well. And I don't think there's links to this team anymore with Billings. I don't know if there was a year of overlap or not. There might have been 1 year of overlap. But these are guys that don't have to be expensive. Robert Tonyan, tight end for the Bears, can't get on the field. I mean, or as Robert May said on The Athletic, like Logan Thomas, like just somebody who has done it for a while, right? And has been a reliable player in the NFL. Just something.
Billings was on the team. Billings was on the team in
2019. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I thought there might have been 1 year.
But yeah, like that's where I'm at too. And I think that there are guys available, and I know that they value their draft picks. I get it. But man, this team is really darn good. And they just reminded you, I would be saying this, by the way, regardless of what happened on Sunday, but they just showed you. They just showed you how good they are. If you can get some help, and I think they can, I really do. I think they could call Bill Belichick and get one of those 2 tight ends. If you could do that, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you do it? Those guys are better, even than Tanner Hudson. And I think Tanner Hudson will be on the roster sooner rather than later, regardless. You might as well get a guy that's proven in the league.
One note just before we get off this, and it's a nice transition back to the game, is Zach Taylor complimentary of his tight ends. Of course he would be, but complimentary of his tight ends after the game on Monday in his press conference. So there is that. They do have an open spot on the roster right now. That might be Charlie Jones. We'll see. Zach says sooner than later there, but we'll transition to some other thoughts there. What Zach Taylor had to say Monday might creep into this a little bit as well. And some guys we didn't talk about, some things we noticed on rewatch going back to Sunday a little bit. We don't have tape yet, so that'll be coming hopefully tomorrow, but we should go back to the game a little bit here as well. We'll do that coming up next. This episode of Locked On Bengals, however, is brought to you by DoorDash. And James, you traveled all the way back from San Francisco as we record this episode. I haven't had time to do anything since I started working today, essentially on football related stuff. And I'm hungry. I'm ready to get some food in me. DoorDash is there for me to get me that food without me having to go way out of my way to do it. And if you're just trying to watch the Bengals on Sunday, why root for your team on an empty stomach when you could order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites? And maybe it's your dinner tonight, James. City Bird.
Yep.
You Cincinnati locals know about City Bird.
Tonight, maybe using DoorDash tonight, no doubt.
Getting that spicy chicken sandwich with that city slaw, that sriracha mayo. They have the local favorites in addition to anything else you might be looking for. Right now, you can save 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order with DoorDash using promo code LOCK23, subject to change. Terms apply. Don't forget, that's promo code LOCK23 for 50% off up to $10 on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change. Terms apply.
Today's show is also brought to you by Streetside Brewery. Streetside is the place you have to go if you're coming into town for Sunday's game against the Buffalo Bills. And maybe you're going to the game. Well, they have a tailgate before every home game. Drink and food specials, games, prizes. So come in on Sunday afternoon before you make your way downtown. They're located at 4003 Eastern Avenue in Columbia, Tusculum, near Lunken Airport. They have 24 taps. I love Streetside's variety. They're going to have beers that you look at and you're like, oh my goodness, I've never heard of a flavor like that. I have to try it. It's the perfect place to go. Happy hour Monday through Friday, 4 to 6. You can get it in your favorite bars, restaurants, and bottle shops in the tri-state area as well. So check them out, Streetside. And I always say it, by the way, check them out for the pregame tailgate party. I'm telling you. Thank me later. You see us on YouTube. Jake's rocking the hat. I'm rocking the t-shirt. It's not the west side or the east side. The best side is street side.
So Zach Taylor's talking up his tight ends on Monday in the press conference, doing the coaching thing. That's not where we're going to focus our attention here. But there are some things that I noticed on rewatch that we forgot to talk about yesterday. And I want to start with Mike Hilton, James.
Ballin'.
We're starting with the Short Kings today as we revisit Sunday, because Mike Hilton has shown the last couple of weeks, and especially against the San Francisco 49ers, a return to form in a big way. I know he had an interception erased by I called it a questionable penalty. 49ers fans and film guys on Twitter said you just can't go that low, referring to DJ Reader's hip. To me, it started, waist, high thigh. He slid down a little bit, whatever. We're not going to litigate that call, but Mike Hilton, even outside of that play, showed off his instincts. The tackling was great. And that's the kind of play you're looking for Mike Hilton, especially when the Bengals are matching two running backs from San Francisco with nickel personnel. And they're saying, Mike Hilton, you're going to go be a linebacker. And as Mike at Bengals_Sands has said on this show in the past, James, linebacker in a corner's body. And he showed up and made some great plays in that context, including that great tackle for loss to help the Bengals get off the field, I believe, early in the game at some point. But great to see Mike Hilton bounce back, and just wanted to start there because I realized we did not give him his flowers yesterday when going through some of the standouts on defense, and he deserves them. Yeah,
he does, no doubt. And I talked to Mike after the game, and he was fired up for sure. And he should be. This defense, they're ramping up and getting into form. And I think Mike, over the past month or so, has started to string some games together and moments together. And I know he wanted that pick. He certainly wanted that. But yeah, I think he's one of those guys, and that's going to be a factor, a big factor over the next 10 weeks for this team. And if the Bengals are going to get where they want to go, we're going to be talking about Mike Hilton blitzing, making big tackles, making big plays on the ball, whether it's interceptions, fumble recoveries, all of those things, because he's a playmaker. And I love that you called him a short king, because we're about the same height, and I rock with Mike because he hits like a freaking freight train when needed to. So he's been playing very well. I expect it to continue moving forward too.
That was both for you and because I'm trying to keep up with them kids. I think that's the thing they say. So some other things that are noteworthy, just coming away from the game. Saw a little bit more of a defensive line rotation in this game, I think, than we've seen for quite a while. Sam Hubbard and BJ Hill both played a ton, but DJ Reader only played 32 snaps. Love seeing that they were able to get DJ off the field a little bit. Trey Hendrickson, I think more due to his injury than anything, but he also was down to 39 snaps out of a total of 59 on the defensive side of the ball this week. So for both of those guys, getting the snap counts down a little bit. Saw a lot more Zach Carter this week. They had extra defensive tackles up, so a lot more Josh Tupou this week. A little bit curious about what's going on with Joseph Osai. Still just 9 snaps for Osai, 9 snaps for Miles Murphy, a little bit of a step up for Murphy and his involvement. And I believe he had a really nice play in the flat, if I'm remembering correctly, to make a tackle when he dropped into coverage in the open field, when he dropped out on his side in a 5 defensive line look. And it was a play action play. So I like that for Miles Murphy. That showed some development, I think, just a little bit of a flash there, but love seeing that defensive line rotation stepping up a little bit. And DJ Reader, we've talked about their need for interior pass rush, and I still think this exists, but DJ Reader the last couple of weeks has really been pushing that pocket and really been making things uncomfortable in the middle. And so he always outstanding in the run game, by himself, stuffed essentially the 49ers fullback dive on their first drive of the game, and had a number of plays early in the game that really popped to me in run defense. So always like to see what he does on the field, but nice to see them stepping up that rotation a little bit, because they are going to need him in the long run.
They are. And I think that's one of the interesting parts about this defense moving forward is how they shuffle through these guys. Is it going to be Osai? Could Murphy be the guy a bit more? I do wonder. I wonder how it's going to play out. I
still
assume,
can't sample for the most part.
No doubt, but it is, and I just mean rotation in general, not even necessarily on the interior. Is Osai going to be the guy? Because everyone felt like he was going to be, I think. And well, we're 8 weeks in now, and at some point you would expect him. It's not like it's a playing time thing from an experience standpoint. He's experienced now, and we expected him to take the next step. And for some reason, he's not getting a ton of reps. So we'll see. Maybe he has 2 sacks against the Bills on Sunday and plays 40 snaps or 35 snaps and is really effective. Who knows? But I do think that is a question mark moving forward. But overall, this defensive front is ramping up into form. And heck, Trey Hendrickson, shout out to him, because he was dealing with that ankle, comes back, and he makes the play that ended the game. It didn't seal it. The game was already over, but he certainly ended it. And it does sound like he avoided anything serious. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, Zach Taylor, just on the note with injuries, Cam Taylor-Britt also got banged up in his presser on Monday. So they're just going to manage some guys this week. It didn't sound like there's anything crazy. It sounds like they're just going to maybe have to manage some guys in practice. We might see some limited. We might see some rest for Trey Hendrickson, for Cam Taylor-Britt potentially this week. And the clock might start on Charlie Jones as well. We'll see. He didn't want to commit to that, but said sooner rather than later. But for Trey Hendrickson, even with that ankle injury, PFF had him with his second highest amount of pressures this season, with 8 total pressures on the game. Obviously had the fantastic strip sack to really, drive in those nails that were already pretty well sealed on the coffin. The last thing for me on the defensive side of the ball, James, something I was surprised about with the Bengals' approach to covering George Kittle in this game was that we did not see the Dax Hill-George Kittle matchup very much, if at all. I'm not sure we saw it at all in terms of like man coverage, Dax go man up George Kittle. We saw a lot of bracketing, and that often featured Nick Scott and Jermaine Pratt, and led to some big plays, unfortunately. And that wasn't all on those guys. Some of that is just they got a couple of times. And sometimes George Kittle's also just going to dunk on you because he's really good. But that was a curiosity to me that we didn't see Dax more in that role. I also want to talk about the offensive line, James. I tweeted a couple things about Cordell Volson. Some people got upset. I think he actually had a pretty good game. And I think the offensive line in general on rewatch was pretty dang good too. So we'll talk about the offensive line to finish up the show and some other notes on offense here coming up next. This episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast is sponsored by FanDuel, where you can score early this season or in the middle of the season with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers will get a $150 credit in bonus bets with any $5 money line bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if your team wins. Just bet on the Bengals to cover. If they win, if you had done this last week, $150 in bonus bets. Maybe you like some other sorts of betting. You're not new to FanDuel. Right now, I looked today. The Cincinnati Bengals regular season win total for 2023 is now set at 9.5. You want to tell me the Cincinnati Bengals can't go at least 6-4 the rest of the way? Joe Burrow feeling good, team reasonably healthy, finding their footing on the West Coast against the San Francisco 49ers. Well, if you do, that's a line you can take advantage of at FanDuel, and there's no better time to get in on the action with that $150 bonus bets available to you. The app is super easy to use for spreads, players, props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
Today's show is also brought to you by Pierce Dental. Pierce Dental Group has 2 locations, one in downtown Cincinnati, one in northern Kentucky. They are the premier dental group in the area. They provide world-class experience and create confident smiles. You want to be confident. You want to smile at the next office party and be confident in that smile. But you got to get to Pierce Dental Group. Their downtown location, by the way, is inching closer to 100 years, less than 2 decades away from 100 years. They were established in 1942, the highest rated dentist in the area with over 1,300 5-star reviews. And yes, of course, they do cosmetics, dental implants, Invisalign. They also do routine care. And Pierce Dental Group offers flexible payment options and pride themselves on maximizing your dental insurance. So get to the local place that is going to treat you best and find the right path for you to create a confident smile. Visit them online at piercedentalgroup.com, PEARCE dentalgroup.com, or visit Pierce Dental Group on Instagram or Facebook.
A lot to talk about on this offense, James. I want to give you a second here to start this segment before I get too far into some of this trench stuff, because I know you love your skill guys. And for the wide receivers and for Joe Mixon and wide receivers, including Trenton Irwin and Andre Yosevach, it was a very productive day for that group with Joe Burrow back in form. And I feel like we gave them love yesterday, but just want to reiterate that point and give you an opportunity to talk about your favorite position group.
Well, there were so many big plays in key moments. The T. Higgins play following the Jermaine Pratt interception, it at least flipped the field, right? And it gave the Bengals a shot. I thought they were going to go down and score. Obviously they didn't, but still, it was good to see these guys get involved. Andre Yosevach off script for a second straight week. Burrow trusting him. Burrow finding Irwin over the middle for an explosive play. There are clearly guys Burrow trusts. And, he completed 7 passes to 7 different receivers. And Yosevach is one of them. Who knows? Maybe Charlie Jones will get in the mix if he comes back as well. But I think they do have a bunch of different guys to throw at opponents that can make a play or two here and there. And Yosevach is quickly becoming one of those guys. So they deserve a ton of credit. Joe Mixon deserves credit as well. I thought he was running hard. But this is a good transition because the men in the trenches, you're right. They deserve a ton of credit because those Joe Mixon holes were wide open. There were plenty of times he was running and you could have fit a Mack truck in between the guard and center when Mixon was running through. I mean, the 20-yard run that set up the first touchdown, he's cooking and he gets tripped up inside the 5 on the one run where I thought he was going to score. And obviously had the nice cut at the end to score the touchdown. So Joe's running hard. The offensive line, it was their best run blocking game of the season for my money, no doubt. And I know Frank Pollock, no one was happier than him because he went to the place he played for multiple years and won there. So is a heck of a job. And I think this offensive line is coming along. And like I said, we've been higher on it last episode. We've been higher on them, I think. At least I have. I've been higher on them than some. And we saw why on Sunday. And I think with Burrow playing the way he is now and healthy, this offensive line is going to continue to tick up and become more and more of a strength, not a weakness.
Trying to find the last time the Bengals won in San Francisco. Wasn't actually all that long ago, 2015. They won 24-14 in San Fran.
That was A.J. McCarron. His Bengals led won in San Fran. So,
but from what I can see before that, the last time was 1974. So, anyway, not relevant to the offensive line conversation. The offensive line, you're right, was great, especially early. The number of perfectly blocked run plays early in this game and the game plan that we saw in the running game this week was very impressive to me. The Bengals know, and you can see this on a play I tweeted. I mislabeled it crunch. It's not crunch. It's just like a wind back kind of play. It's a variant of zone, I believe. Joe Mixon takes it down. I think this is the one you're talking about, where he gets down to the 3. And Orlando Brown and Ted Karras get out to the second level. Everybody else kind of seals off the backside. You got Jamar Chase going in ghost motion behind the running play. You can see the entire second level go with Jamar Chase, just in case they're going to pitch it back to Jamar Chase and give him a lead toss play. And that gets the entire second level to move over a little bit. And then in the first level, you have Nick Bosa flying up the field. You got the interior defensive line for San Francisco trying to penetrate, trying to fly up the field. And you get good seal off down block kind of stuff from the backside of the offensive line. From Cordell Volson had a great block there. Kappa, Jonah Williams both had really good blocks on the play. And then you get second level blocking. You get Ted Karras out on the second level on Fred Warner. You get Orlando Brown out at the second level, and nobody touches Joe Mixon for like 10 yards at least. It's a thing of beauty. And then it's a safety and it's Fred Warner. They combine to bring him down around the 3. But that was not isolated. There are a number of plays where it's perfectly blocked and Mixon has a chasm to run through and isn't contacted until the 3rd level a few times. And this is not just Mixon running either. You also have Joe Burrow adding in the running game. You have both Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon adding 20+ yard runs. The explosion aspect here, I think every single receiver that touched the ball, Jamar had a 20-yard catch. T had a 30+ yard catch. I'm pretty sure
everyone but Andre.
Boyd had 22. Everybody but Andre. Trenton Irwins was 24, 25 or something like that. Everybody but Andre, who caught a touchdown pass, was over 20 yards. So a lot more explosive plays, a lot more chunk plays for this team in this game. Some of that, the run blocking that I just talked about. And then on top of that, I thought that they acquitted themselves extremely well as pass blocking as a unit. Early in the game, in fact, I think the first 2 plays of the game, Cordell Volson starts the game with stoning Javon Hargrave. Next play, they run a little TE stunt with Bosa and Hargrave, and Kappa and Volson and Orlando Brown hand it off perfectly. And I think this is a play. Actually, no, this isn't the next play. This is a 3rd down where Joe Burrow ends up scrambling like crazy on that 3rd down to find T. Higgins. There's a tackle and stunt at the beginning of that's picked up perfectly. And that's just like a really impressive level up against 2 really good players for that left side. You look at PFF grades, they're going to tell you Orlando Brown has a 40 pass blocking grade. I don't buy it. I think Orlando Brown did a great job of surviving against Nick Bosa. And I think that's really what you would expect. There were some pressures. I thought they were manageable pressures. And some of this also looked a lot better because Joe Burrow, remember last year when every week I was saying, man, Joe Burrow was playing on time today.
Yeah.
He was playing on time in this game, like 95% of the time. And you go look at his PFF grade under pressure in this game. And I don't know what they're counting as pressures, as I just discussed, but 10 of 10 on 16 pressures for 136 yards, a touchdown, a 96 total grade under pressure, which is wild. So not only the offensive line playing well, but I think Burrow also in tandem, in sync with that offensive line, getting rid of the ball on time.
That's the part of this where it was just so tough at times to judge the line. Now,
Mhm.
they needed to be better at run blocking. They were on Sunday and responded. Like I said, I can't overstate this. San Francisco fans were very, very angry with the defensive line going into Sunday.
I know.
I spent Thursday on in the Bay, listened to some of the local radio, did a couple guest hits, and there was pressure on those guys. Excuse me. There was pressure on those guys. Bengals offensive line came to play and brought it to a group that was coming in probably desperate with a chip on their shoulder. So heck of an effort. They deserve praise. I can't wait to hear what Sands has to say when we do our film review, unless the Bengals make a trade tomorrow or between now and then. But the film review will be fun discussing this offensive line, no doubt.
Yeah, and talking about game plan too. The under center stuff, really fun to watch that early in the game. Really effective wrinkles for them. I thought it was a really well planned game on both sides of the ball, really. I thought both Lou and Brian and Zach had a really good plan for this game. And I think Joe Burrow gave Jamar Chase credit for coming over to the sideline and talking about that fake screen touchdown that Jamar caught. Talked about how they were defending some of that stuff in the game. So even Jamar is down there. And I think Joe's talked about this in the past. Joe Burrow's talked about the contributions from the receivers in the past are down there making schematic adjustments that the coaches are listening to and then implementing, and then you're scoring touchdowns off it. So nice to see that this week, but got to keep it going, as Joe Burrow said. Can enjoy this win for sure, massive win, but let's see them keep it going. Got a couple more tough games coming up. Would love to see this trend continue. We'll continue to talk about it this week. Hopefully get some film review. Then we switch our attention to prime time football against the Buffalo Bills. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.